This is good. The last couple of speakers and panels are going to be very difficult to follow up on. Everybody was incredibly smooth and what I call TV ready. I will not be anything like that. And this panel will be sort of chaotic because it sort of reflects the current state of affairs with generative AI and synthetic media. It's a chaotic rollout. I am a middle-aged white male with rapidly thinning hair, sitting on top of a building on the shores of an island called Manhattan. And I want to begin by just summarizing the overview of this particular panel, which is this is going to be an introduction to synthetic media and generative AI images. We'll include a little bit of copyright discussion, ownership issues behind the images as well. And then we'll dive into how should IPTC support AI and generative models in the future. In other words, we'll hopefully, as the summary states, include questions about whether or not we should identify certain tools, text prompts, and/or models that were used to generate the generative image as part of the next version of a standard or future version of a standard. Should we include a flag that indicates content was created using a green or copyright cleared set of training images, ethical AI images, and so that'll all be points of discussion. But I thought that for the audience today, because there's so much out there right now, and I don't expect any of you to be experts, I will tell you that I am a non-voting member of IPTC. I sit on the Video Metadata Standards Committee. I am the managing director of a company called Microstocksolutions, and we are a service provider to the visual media industry and beyond. We provide the first sets of eyes and brain cells on the vast majority of inbound content to a who's list of stock agencies, as well as providing metadata and video post-production services to other companies and the like. However, during COVID, because I was incredibly bored and things were ripe for change, I co-founded a company called vAIsual, which is the first ethically clean or the first ethical AI, generative AI company. And vAIsual is a technology platform that creates algorithms which are ethically clean, as well as we have the world's largest biometrically released data set hosted on the datasetshop.com. Let me sort of first lay out a scenario here where I believe what I call the three stages where metadata can be applied, makes contact with synthetic assets, because this is an incredibly complicated subject that doesn't have what I call a straight A to B, what do you call it, storyline. In other words, I put film in a camera, I put a piece of media in a camera, I point the camera at an object, I press the shutter, that results in an image. I then place that image within an asset management solution system and/or an editing platform, and well, there it is for everybody to see. This is a lot more complicated than that. All synthetic media starts off with training data. Unfortunately, the largest, most popular platforms which are available today to the general public have all been trained on scraped data. That means that all of their content, while entertaining, awe-inspiring, absolutely simply amazing, it's a fact. I mean, these are dramatic results, are commercially toxic and legally toxic, meaning that if we all attempted to use any of this content for commercial purposes, we run the risk of being sued. And Valérie will have an opportunity to speak about that during this panel. And so it is critical that the training data be clean, ethically sourced. That particularly means that you've gone out and paid the content creatives for their static data, their libraries of non-biometric photography to train the algorithm to recognize what a tree looks like, what a computer mouse looks like, what a car looks like, what a blender looks like, what any non-human assets look like. And then there is the other part, which is the human factor. All humans, and I think I can say this without I can say this very, very straightforward, that photography and no images can really, or it's very rare that an image can be very, very powerful without a person. And I think we all relate very, very rapidly to seeing somebody in a photograph. We all immediately look at it and think, oh, well, that person looks like me, or we get a feeling from them, and so on and so forth. And so the training data that's required that involves humans is a lot more complicated than that does not require humans. And so all of this content needs to be what do you call it? It all needs to be tagged with metadata, and because it's static content, it's pretty easy to do. The IPTC standards presently allow pretty easy application of metadata. Then there is the resulting reproductions, which are made from the training data, the synthetic outputs, the static synthetic outputs of content, which come out of any resulting training session. That too can easily have IPTC metadata applied to it. What fields are ultimately modified or amended to make that content searchable and discoverable is just another story, but that can easily be applied to it. The third and most interesting and perhaps challenging thing that we face is the resulting images that we get from typing in a prompt. So if we type the prompt, the synthographer sits down in front of a generative AI platform, then types in a prompt. That prompt is metadata. As Ralph Windsor from DAM News, Digital Asset Management News, once said, he said, instead of being the tool to search a repository of content, metadata is the tool to generate it, and effectively the DNA code of the asset itself, which I think was quite telling. And this was made almost a year and a half ago, and it still holds true today. And so with no further ado, I'm going to introduce our two panelists, Valérie Théveniaud-Violette, who's going to join us from CEPIC, as well as Dmitry Shironosov from Everypixel. And whenever, Valérie, if you're ready to present, I'm sure the audience would be glad to see the slide presentation that was put together by yourself and Sylvie.
I share my screen. Hold on.
I'd just say thank you very much to Valérie for stepping in. So Sylvie is stuck in traffic in London somewhere, so our scheduled panelist wasn't able to make it, but Valérie's very kindly offered to step in.
I will try my best. My English is less fluent.
Sure, great.
Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Sorry about that. Sorry. I'm sorry.
If it's easier, I could share my screen and you could just talk.
Yes, maybe it will be easier if you don't mind.
Thank you, Brandon.
So.
Okay. Good. So I will present myself already. I'm Valérie Théveniaud-Violette. I was a former syndication director for Le Figaro Group. And it's for this reason I worked a long time ago with the CEPIC, and I'm quite involved in all these actions to protect and defend content producer. And what Mark said earlier, I think it gives a very good idea of the reason why of the decision of the CEPIC to work on this question of created an ethical guideline for AA in visual content. As you said, Mark, there are new technology and creator of visual content want to use it, but it has to be clear and on a very straightforward basis. It's a reason why the working out has been created in an inclusive, and we try to have it international, and having joined us people from the technology, from the creation of visual data, agency, and of course with legal knowledge, to be sure we will create a substantial document. I'm not sure you are seeing everything. Can you hear me very well?
Yes, we can hear you. Sorry, I'm just clicking through the slides when I think
yes,
it's appropriate.
Yes,
if you want to do it by the time, you know.
And so this group beginning to work on May this year, and we try we are almost, it is almost finished, but in the meantime, one of the first decisions of the group was to create a kind of survey among the CEPIC members to know more what their expectations were about AA, and what did they want to use it? Did they use it already? What are their concerns about it? And it's this survey helps us to work more in details and more close from the concerns of the profession. And most of the answer was, we are not using yet, but we think we can do, we will do in different fields for documentation, research, support, marketing. So they were not against AA at all, but they don't know if legally and in terms of quality, they can be quite reassured they can use it. So you can continue. We are on the goal now. So we try with the guidelines to answer this concern, and to be, the idea is to have a sustainable AA in visual content. And we thought it's really important to begin right from the very start of the usage. And so it's we try to identify what were the possible harms that AA usage can create, and how to preserve the creators from these harms. And of course, some of our issues we met in this with different panels already. Fake news, copyright third-party infringement, diversity issues, and of course to have a fair business environment for the company. About the way we structure our guidelines, there are two parts: the data collection and sourcing, and of course the data production. And we try to apply to these two activities the GDPR commitment. And we try to answer this with this commitment and find example to explain what would be the good way to follow these rules. Of course, it's a work in progress. The guideline is almost finished, but it's not published yet. And we think using the principle of GDPR will make this quite perenne. And we want to, of course, follow the evolution of the technology and the law, and maybe change some example inside the guideline to be sure we are compliant with the actuality. Thank you.
I'd like to now ask Dmitry Shironosov of Everypixel to join the panel and to give his presentation. Dmitry is an icon in the stock media industry and has for well over 15 years been in the top of the top list of both producers and licensors of stock media. And so, Dmitry, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark, for such a nice introduction. So, following the guidelines, I'm brown hair, white middle-aged man sitting in my home office in Bali Island. So let me share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Great. So yeah, as Mark already mentioned, Everypixel is not just production and IT company. We are both, and not only creating synthetic media products, but we always trying to find the best solution for content creators. And yeah, we all know now that synthetic media become a new hype, not only in Silicon Valley between investors, but in all over the world. Thousands of people are generating millions of images every day. And we understand that all content production market inevitably moving to this direction. And this will change commercial content market quite soon. So this is just my thoughts about what we can do and in this situation, and some sort of products that we are already using in this case. So the problem that we mentioned before about the clean, copyright cleared set of training images, for me now is really complicated, and honestly saying, I'm not really sure where is the threshold between the legal usage of data set and illegal usage, because we all know that text to images neural networks now that used by Shutterstock, Canva, and other stock agencies created the creation of these data sets was from Leon, that is 5 billion for stable diffusion clip to create the link between the text description and the pictures, that is like 400 million images. And for me, it's really hard to understand how to get the clean data set for training the neural networks, less than some hundreds of million images in that. Yeah, and we also know that exists an ethical and economic problem for creators that can in future lose their jobs. And as we see here on this picture, the quality of AI generated content is really low, and most of it has no commercial value, at least now. So here is the possible solution that we implemented. It's the algorithm that we call face beautification and face feature customization. On the input, we have image of the woman that has been generated by text-to-image neural networks, and in the output you can see how it, and yeah, and on the first picture you can see many artifacts. It's easy to determine, and on the second output is after the beautification and we can see it's looking better and more affordable for usage. For example, we can use this. I'm sorry. We can use this picture to mix together with the image that created by photographer, by the real human, and solve the problem of rare appearance. Here is one more example. Just input is the terrible, scary face of generated in one of the text-to-image neural networks, and output is this. This is the picture that has been processed by face beautification. And a couple of more examples. Also, input is just the raw images from text-to-image, and output is the image that already looking like a real photos. So, sorry. One possible solution for the above mentioned problems that AI algorithms could be a tool, not the only decision for content producers, but a tool to boost their creativity. And that, for me, looks similar with what stock image agencies did maybe 10 or more years ago. And in this case, metadata could reflect the creator to get information together with the history of neural networks manipulation. For me, one of the solutions is watermarking algorithms that can help to track the usage of the copyrighted content when it was combined together with algorithms. And here we can see one more example is on the input, it was the real image of the woman, and on the output, the different solutions to create, for example, the diversity. And a couple of more examples here. Also, input, this is the image from a photographer, and output, as you can see, the different variation of the same man, but it was made by the algorithm, AI algorithm. And one more example. And now we know about the lawsuit that's happened right now, actually, and maybe last week, and against OpenAI. And for me, this case absolutely similar with the things that are happening now in the world of text-to-image generation, because OpenAI provides the access to code that was scraped from a huge database of GitHub, and I think that this will be an interesting precedent to understand what is the difference between legal and illegal usage of AI-generated images. For me, that's it. We'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dmitry, and Valérie as well. I'd like to just share with the audience my screen here, and I'm going to put up here for everybody to take a look at, not to look at themselves. Hold on one moment. Let me get rid of everybody so you don't have to see yourselves. And I am now going to bring up oops, let me see. Let me bring that down a little bit. I hope everybody can see this. This is the homepage of datasetshop.com, which is vAIsual's portal to the machine learning industry, where they can come and aggregate as well as license pre-aggregated data sets. This will help Dmitry. This will help answer Dmitry's question as well as perhaps any other questions that people have about ethical AI. And so right now, what you're looking at is a number of options here: synthetic humans, as well as human faces of only women, as well as only squared augmented green screen faces. These are real humans, all of whom who were brought into a studio, who signed biometric model releases, who had to explain to them that their images were going to be used exclusively for machine learning and generative AI purposes, and have agreed to do so, and were paid for their time and efforts. And it is this material which anybody who wants to now train an algorithm can come to, create a license which fits their needs, and then download a set of content to then train their algorithm with. And very shortly, we will unleash an additional volume of approximately 500,000 non-biometrically released images. This is images, as I described earlier, of blenders, sofas, street scenes, valleys, and asphalt. Everything that you can honestly think of that makes up elements of a great image, and this will help solve the problem that vexes this industry at this moment, as both previous speakers well noted, that the majority of content, or the majority of the algorithms that are out there right now have been trained, unfortunately, on scraped data, which makes their outputs quite suspect. I'm going to now stop sharing, and I have a couple of questions here from, excuse me, from the audience. One moment, and I'm going to. First of all, I see that Lisa has asked, would you speak about whether or not, or how works code-generated by humans with AI will be noted copyrightable? This is the trillion-dollar question. There is no answer to that at this very moment. The courts have yet to speak on this. Excuse me, it must be going around. The courts have yet to speak on this, and certainly everybody's waiting on bended knee to find out what the U.S. courts will decide, whether or not content created solely by algorithm or in cooperation with a human, in other words, a synthographer who enters those prompts, is that now copyrightable because the prompts themselves were created by humans, and therefore it's a collaboration. It's not just that the AI sits there and autonomously generates images. It can do that, but at this very moment, the platforms don't allow for that. They allow exclusively for people to sit there and input their words in any combination, and then generate an output which might or might not be licensable in the future. I have another question here from Lisa as well. What if the data comes from items the AI generates? Oh, sorry. What if the data that comes from items the AI generates comes from works in the public domain? So answer your question on that is that much of the Lion data set that Dmitry spoke about, and a number of the other data sets which contain, unfortunately, vast volumes of copyrightable scraped data in which the copyright holders were never paid, do incorporate open public domain content. And that, of course, is very much acceptable. So any kind of, a Creative Commons content without attribution is absolutely allowed. Any other questions that I can answer, or the panel?
Can I just follow up on the public domain issue? Isn't the issue that yes, those data sets do contain some content that was public domain and that was Creative Commons licensed, that can be used in a way that is perfectly legit, but we don't know which. And it's mixed in with a bunch of copyrighted data as well, copyrighted images as well. So the fact that those data sets were trained on some information that was public domain isn't good enough. And to make it ethical, it has to be trained purely on maybe a mix of public domain and legally released.
Sourced.
Yeah, so that's the main issue, really.
Very much so. But I'd also like to be able to turn the conversation just ever so slightly back to IPTC, because I think it's really why we're here today. And the metadata standards that were created, back in 1990, the beginning of the 90s, I should say, were all created to address static content. We're entering into a completely new era right now, which is going to be wholly dynamic. and very, very small numbers of static content. Well, certainly in the news, sports, and entertainment sphere, but in the creative sphere, it'll be all dynamically created. And so, how IPTC adapts to that and adapts the standards to that, and what fields become eligible, or I should say, not the word eligible, become usable for this is certainly one that I would love to hear from anybody in the audience about. I think it's a really interesting opportunity now to get some great inputs. If anybody would like to weigh in on that. As I said, you know, at the training stage, in other words, the training data absolutely is a static asset, and that will continue to have IPTC metadata applied to it in a traditional way. The synthetic outputs also continue to enjoy the IPTC standard or enjoy the structure of the IPTC standard for photo metadata. However, the generative part is a whole new ballgame, and how that is addressed is something that is a complete unknown. Anybody? No?
Anyone want to weigh in on this? If anyone else wants to, if any of the attendees want to say something, then please just raise your hand or say something in the chat, and I can allow you to speak in the webinar. So please just let us know.
Hi, Brendan. Can I just I'm trying to clarify what Mark is asking. Are you asking about like when the synthetic media is generated, in what way that would be indicated in embedded metadata? Is that the question you're asking specifically?
Well, actually, I think so. So in other words, look, remember that the prompt engineer, the synthographer, sits there, the editor sits there and types in a series of words. That in itself is metadata, but
right.
Of course it's not standardized. The output, which is dynamic until it's downloaded, and which at that point it becomes static. So if two people sat down at the exact same what do you call it, generative AI portal, let's talk about OpenAI. If two people at two separate computers typed in the exact same prompt, they would return two separate results.
Correct. Yes.
And so it is a dynamic piece of content, but of course, if it's saved and downloaded, it becomes a static piece of content. If that photograph is then dropped back into a GPT-3 platform, it will then spit back out the words which were then used to generate that piece of content. And that, of course, is metadata. But we, as content managers, could continue to apply traditional IPTC metadata to that piece of static content. It's very, very confusing at this very moment. I'm sorry that it doesn't come across any clearer.
I do have a quick question, because at least in my understanding, GPT doesn't work GPT-3 isn't working in reverse. Like if you put in a prompt and then you have an image and then you try to you can't get an exact prompt back from that image unless it's been saved somewhere. But it doesn't, it's not working in reverse, right? It doesn't have any more understanding than what we're getting right now from alt text and so on. But I see your point. I mean, the question is, at what point would metadata be embedded that would indicate, if someone so desired, to be able to say, this was synthetic, this was the prompt I used, this was the generator I used, whether it was Stable Diffusion or Midjourney or something like that, and you know, where did the source of this image come from? That is interesting to think about, how that might get embedded and what fields might be used. You know, is there even a point at which you know, that could be automated somehow in the process of the media generation, which would be really interesting to be able to do.
Yeah,
do
that
it.
is a question that has come up, and we've been busy in the photo metadata working group preparing for this conference, among other things. But I think that's something that we really need to look at in the coming months to think about, is there a need for some extra properties in the photo metadata standard, or at least some guidance for synthetic media tools to use the properties that exist around things like the prompt that was used to create this image, the tool that was used to create this image, the specific model used by the tool to create this image, because some of them have models that evolve over time. And one thing that we do have that we've mentioned very briefly, but we haven't gone into much detail, is there is a property that's existed, I think, since the first versions of photo metadata standard called digital source type. And previously that just had the statement of whether this image came from a capture from a digital camera, or was it a scan from a negative or a scan from a positive film. But we've recently added, in the last 6 months, we've added some more fields to cover, some more values to cover the possibility of generated content, and a few variations on generated content around was this created as a composite of images that were themselves synthetically generated. So there's a taxonomy of those. Literally, we've created a taxonomy around specifying those, and the property that can be used to store that taxonomy value already exists. So we had that property already there, and now we've expanded on it to support more values.
Brennan, I was going to say that's been around since 2009, although in its earlier incarnations, it was basically like, I think the one that would apply here is something like image generated by software. So it's very vague, and that's since been updated. Whether or not all applications are backwards compatible to where that could be updated, and because you're going from something very general to something more specific, that's another issue. But yeah, that is there. But whether or not there's a need to capture and hold some of the text prompts that were used and the system that was used and things like that is something we're trying to find out. So if anybody has any input, maybe we need to do a special session on that.
I'm happy to weigh in. I think we developed our own taxonomy and spent a huge amount of time just sort of thinking about what fields that IPTC presently has are applicable to us, and what fields would be sort of on a wish list for future iterations of the standard. Because I think that as this develops, there will be need for fields that we don't even know about at this very moment that will have to be there in order to then transmit that kind of information to users or to recipients of the content. Any other questions? We're just literally on the minute, literally 1 minute prior to the end of the session, and so it's really good, perfect timing. Thank you very much, Margaret, and thank you very much, David, and everybody else, who Lisa as well, for asking some really great questions. And I'll turn this back over to Brendan and conclude our session.
Great, thank you very much to Mark, and to particularly to Valérie for stepping in at last minute, and to Dmitry as well. Unfortunately, Martin from Mobius Labs couldn't attend because he just got COVID today, and Sylvie from CEPIC, who was supposed to be on the panel, is stuck in traffic with strikes in London.